Welcome to Open Studio on Brattleboro Community Television. My name is Chris Lenois, and today we are visiting with Kate Link and Marijne van den Kieboom, and they've created a personal leadership retreat program called aWALKening, which is exactly what it sounds like, an opportunity for participants to use walking as a vehicle for both self-reflection and collaboration. Welcome to the program.
Thanks.
Thanks
for having us.
So let's begin by saying, how did I do with that description? Is that a decent snapshot of what aWALKening is about?
Yeah.
aWALKening is, in fact, as you mentioned, a retreat. It actually is a service, one of the services in a larger program called Leadership in Motion. So we're very interested in talking about aWALKening as well as the larger umbrella of Leadership in Motion.
Okay, and this weekend you just finished up a aWALKening retreat here in Brattleboro. And was that part of a bigger program, or was that specifically the aWALKening aspect of it?
So it is the aWALKening aspect of it, and participants who come through aWALKening have multiple opportunities to grow in their leadership and, as you mentioned, in their personal reflection, and to grow into embodying their leadership more, hence Leadership in Motion.
So somebody might be starting off spending the weekend doing what they were doing and then continue in these other aspects of the Leadership in Motion program?
Absolutely. Or they can start elsewhere and then wind up and feel more ready, perhaps, to participate in an aWALKening retreat.
Now, you both are professional coaches.
Yes.
How did you land upon this model of working with people?
Yeah. We met through a leadership program, and our names were picked out of a hat. And we had to search for what is it that is your purpose and what is my purpose or passion, and how to get those paths converging. So that's exactly what happened. We found what is equal in our things that we love to do, and that's where we started working on the relationship and this work, and that's where Leadership in Motion emerges from.
Now, was it something that you two were already kind of working on in parallel, and then you sort of realized you were doing the same thing already?
Great question. No, we weren't.
No? Okay.
And it just started from there. And it was 1.5 years ago, I think? Yeah.
And to your point is that we are both really walkers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And for me, what was emerging in my life is really recognizing the transformational power of walking. I had just walked the Camino de Santiago in Spain. I had actually started in the French Pyrenees and walked across Spain about 500 miles, made my way to the Atlantic Ocean. Soon before, our names were pulled out of this hat in this leadership program in Spain together. It was a year-long program where we met. And so that was very fresh for me, and I was really wanting to dive deeper into both leadership and walking. And as I was walking these 500 miles, I realized there is a lot of alignment between walking and leadership.
Yes. And adding to what Kate is saying so beautifully is that we are both in the industry of learning and developing and making curricula, is it? So I'm just truly fascinated about how people learn and how we can move people into this world. And for me personally, I've been studying for 15 years about how moving can be an extra in a learning environment. Really placing people in different corners of a room can make a huge difference. If you take them outside to the woods and have them do exercises, they really dive deep into more consciousness and more awareness of who they are and what they can bring.
It still is kind of a pioneering idea. I mean, what we're at least instructed in school is you sit in your desk and you listen to the instructor. Maybe there's a little bit of opportunity for collaboration in a classroom, but actually walking miles while working, I mean, this is something that I've never heard of before. Was there a model for it that you were looking at when you devised the program?
So I want to share, you had mentioned that we had an aWALKening retreat. And one of our participants said to us, you know, I've gone to some leadership training. I like to walk. I've done some personal reflection. This is the first time, as you say, pioneering, this is the first time I've seen all of these pieces come together cohesively. I want to talk briefly about some confluence of factors that make the timing for aWALKening and leadership in motion so timely. Right now, we're really seeing different models of leadership emerging, particularly in Europe and I think the Netherlands, where Marijne is from, really on the forefront of this, where there's sort of a dismantling of the top-down, the typical hierarchical leadership model. So because of that, different people are playing different roles on teams. There's much less siloing happening. So there's need for leadership training. There's also a need for people to feel nimble and flexible in being able to move into these different roles and play into different aspects of leadership. So that's one element. I'll share one or two others. You mentioned, right, people sit a lot in classrooms, in boardrooms, and so this is a little bit stretching the model of what learning can be and how people learn. And we do know from neuroscience that moving and walking in particular does have impact on the brain. There is evidence that it boosts creativity, it boosts mood, it boosts sort of a quieting down of the mind so more insights can arise. And the third factor that I'll mention, actually I'll pass the baton to you if you want to share anything about another factor that's making our work so unique, pioneered.
Yeah, like you said, leadership is changing all over the world. So leadership skills are not only entitled to roles. So what we find is that leadership roles should apply for everyone. And especially in the workplace, you have to really work together. There are no specific roles anymore. There are teams that work together. They have to find out who is responsible for what. So there's new skills to be learned. And how we are used to learning and to communicating is through the head only. So that's only this body part we're using. What we have found is that if you use your whole body, your whole being, more is available to you. If you go inwards and work on your awareness, deeper awareness will give you more awareness of the space around you, of contact between other people. Relationships are better. Work will become better. So the outcomes of your work.
So I was going to ask what kind of leaders would really benefit from this program, but what I'm hearing you say is it could be anybody within an organization.
Definitely.
In fact, it's the dynamic of being an employee would get something out of this, some empowerment out of it.
I would like to extend that actually, because what we believe is that everybody has leadership potential, and that people who come to our work, being anything in our leadership and motion model of services, they might have personal leadership, that they're trying to claim something for themselves in their own lives. It can be somebody in a more traditional work setting. It can be anybody who feels like there's something that they want to emerge that can be categorized as leadership, taking a bold step perhaps.
So you wouldn't necessarily offer this program to an organization, it's something that was available to individuals as well?
So that goes to that menu of services, Chris,
Right.
is that we actually offer something, which is where our work launched. We offer something we call a WALKshop, where we work within an organization, within a corporation, with a team, and really design what it is specifically they need. And we infuse what we know from how people learn and all of this other research about being in nature and so on, and working with these factors that integrate into a whole model. So to your question, yes, we work with individuals and corporations, and the model would be a little shifted. We could do, we haven't yet, but we could do an aWALKening retreat for an organization.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me because I know, like, when I'm working, and a lot of my work is computer oriented, that I find myself, I can't sit still when I'm really into something, when I'm really knowing that it's clicking for me. And so it's interesting to hear this tapping on. What you're saying is I should go for like a 5-mile walk instead of just pacing around my office.
Yeah, well, if you have a writer's block, let's say, then it's a really good idea to step outside. And your subconscious is just working over hours. And when you come back to your workplace, you feel rejuvenated, you are more creative, and things will just roll.
Is there a type of person, you know, you hear about multiple intelligences.
Sure.
Is there a type of person that this sort of program is more conducive to than another type of person?
I love what you said, where you said that you will tend to pace. By the way, I'd rather have you pace than sitting in the chair, right?
Yeah.
So a particular type of person we found through our offerings that we can attract somebody who's wanting to get out of their chair more, who is wanting to take that first step, as well as we had a gentleman in our last retreat who is a rigorous hiker and finding a place for him as well. So we actually work with anybody who is able to walk at least 4 miles, as well as interested in walking 4 miles. And I will just add a caveat here, is that we're looking to build our work for even a wider range of abilities so that everyone can participate, because we even know that metaphors of walking and movement activate different parts of the brain, and so that there can be different learning and can be an opening towards claiming one's leadership, even if they're not physically able or are currently walking.
Yeah. I'd like to ask you about this last weekend in Brattleboro, and maybe that's a good kind of example for people to kind of wrap their head around some of the concepts. Take us through what you had people doing. It started on Friday?
Yes.
Yes.
And we won't reveal anything because there are some things that we want people
Trade secrets.
trade secrets. Yes, you want to share.
Yes, what we did in this retreat, we have this embodied model, leadership model, the ELM. And we let the participant go through that to really recognize that there's a head, which, you know, you can envision ideas, you can vocalize it, you can use your senses in your work. And then you have your core, which you can really have your inner wisdom to project whatever, you know, you want to put out into the world. And you have your left hand, who is receiving, and you have your right hand that's giving. And you have your legs that are the fulcrum of being and doing, and standing still is being in the moment. And then you have the whole field around you that you can tap into. You as a person have an energy around you, but there's also an energy field like you can tap into, like what we all now make happen. Yeah.
So more of also that was beautifully described in terms of our embodied leadership model, some of the more practical hows. How did we do this? So we're learning professionals and really know, as far as brain-based science works, how people learn to create a safe environment, to move them through a process of perhaps initial just fluency with the ideas, and through a weekend experience towards mastery. And we do that through walking, through being in nature, through journaling and reflection, community activities. Storytelling was a big component of our weekend together, and other small group practices. It was amazing to watch this group of people come as disparate people, strangers to each other, and leave already so deeply connected to each other, to have had this very intimate and purposeful experience.
Well, I'd like to hear you both talk about this balance when you're doing these sorts of exercises between a couple of things that are mentioned in the materials that I was reading. Self-reflection and collaboration. And you're trying to allow time and space for both of those things within a group. And those are difficult things to balance. Those are very individualized things to balance. It's something that you probably have to tailor every time you do one of these. But talk a little bit about what you try and do, at least to set some parameters around that.
Everybody gets a journal. Oh, there goes one of the trade secrets.
You said journaling already.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. So everybody gets a journal, and we create, I'll use the word as you have before, sort of sacred times, or I believe that word came up, sacred time for personal reflection and journaling. Whether folks use that time to meditate or actually write, I was astounded by how much writing people did and how much they wanted to do. And in small ways, we'd create opportunities for collaboration. There's one activity in particular that I won't share, which really requires collaboration. How do you move from point A to point B when you can't do it alone? So there are very specific ways we have built this in a progressional way, so people can practice different ways and different intensities of collaboration. And then after having, let's hope, a momentous experience, they will then step out, pause in their lives, and take that time for reflection.
And how much do you know about the participants prior to the beginning of this? I would imagine that they have to apply, right? And so you know for the Brattleboro group that you just went with that they had maybe some expectations of what they were hoping to get out of it?
Exactly. We just do a survey up front to get to know our participants and to be able to communicate up front the expectations back and forth, and to get to know if they're a good physical health to do it, or that we have to adjust the program to sort of, tailor it a little bit to everyone's needs. So yes, we do get to know them, and because it's so individual, such an individual program.
We actually filled up several months in advance, and so we had the wonderful opportunity. We actually did 2 surveys, and we provided informational material. We offered personal inquiries for them. We gave them resources, so we were in communication with them. So by the time they arrived, everyone was at sort of a real ready place to start and dive in, and some of that reflection and some of the walking had already happened.
Yeah. Some of the places you mentioned, Kate, that you had walked before certainly sound very picturesque around here as well. We have some very wonderful places to walk, both in the woods, up on the mountains, in the streets. It would seem like a blend of that from what I was reading. You had people kind of going everywhere.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what do you get from one environment to the next? That's part of the reflection that we explored.
Right. Walking downtown could trigger something different than walking up Wintasticate, for example.
Yes.
Definitely.
And we also used quite a bit of silence. So what is it like to really face your challenges and do so without vocalizing them?
Neat. You're going to Ludlow next, and then you're also
Yes.
doing one in your native country, the Netherlands.
In November, yeah.
How much of this are you looking ahead and tailoring for those different locales?
Well, basically, the culture is not really so much different. The groups might be different, or the participants are different. We can use the things what we did in the retreats here in the US for the Netherlands as well, and elsewhere. So, yeah, we just love to meet people that are interested in walking, in leadership, and want to get to know and use more of their awareness.
And we do those surveys, so we know what the nuances are of each group, so we can, in fact, tailor as needed.
Yeah, I mean, this is still a new program. I think you said a year and a half. Are you able to follow some of these participants? Is that a plan to sort of check outcomes over a period of time, the old quantitative, qualitative collection of data?
Absolutely, and of course technology now really lets you see who is participating what and clicking where, so we really have a good amount of analytics that we can look at to continue with our future planning. As we continue to develop more services, for example, After somebody goes through the retreat, they have the option of participating in what we call a core group. So we follow them for 12 weeks, and we do this through video conference meetings with a small group of 3 to 5 maximum. We do a blend of mastermind and coaching, as well as new learning, so that they can deepen what they experienced in the aWALKening retreat.
I'd be interested in hearing both of you sharing some outcomes, and not necessarily something that you have to give away a person, but things that you've gotten as feedback that are particularly gratifying to you in terms of what people are saying they got out of this experience.
Well, one of the participants said that she was, in this position that she worked with children, and she's really comfortable in leading children, educating children, but talking to adults, that was a whole different ballgame. And she said, then something happened. I just, I start to crumble and stuff happens. So what can she do? What kind of tools can she get from this retreat to actually be more comfortable in her own skin in whatever kind of situation you are, and get the most out of, meeting new people or, vocalizing your message. And that's something that really helped her. She got out of her, because, sitting in the retreat, those were adults. So talking to the people in this retreat was kind of a hurdle. And in the end, she was just, you mentioned storytelling. She was telling stories with such a, passion, and her eyes were shining, and that's
she claimed it.
She claimed her leadership.
And this is just in a couple of days.
Yes, so
you're
it's
talking a weekend retreat. That's really impressive.
Yeah.
Kate, you want to share?
Yeah, I do. A person who is in a leadership role and yet had never gone on this kind of retreat, had never had this kind of away time experience, and somewhat of an intimate and a situation where you really have to be present and show up for yourself and the community. And so she was pretty tentative, and I can say that she's an introvert. So we wondered, all of us, herself included, how challenging this might be. She exited the retreat writing, when's the next one? I need to do more. So she really found this whole other place in herself where she could be comfortable in a group setting and participating in activities that might have otherwise been uncomfortable for her.
Yeah. What about for the two of you? Certainly you had a conception of what this program would be, and now that you've seen it over a year and a half and in a number of different communities, a number of different individuals, has anything surprised you about the program, each of you, in terms of how you thought it would go and said, oh, it never occurred to me that this would happen?
Just the power of it. It's really mind-blowing what happens if you incorporate every aspect of yourself. And what surprised me, like in sports, we know this already, that you have a team, and the fact that if everyone is in the zone, let's say, then you are on fire as a team. And that's just really what happens in those retreats, that people get on fire and
they ignite each other.
They ignite each other. It's like a bonfire. So we don't necessarily do that alone. Not her, not me, but it's collectively, and that's a collaborative leadership that we want to sort of bring into the world as well. And so, yeah, God knows where we go and where the bonfire goes, right?
Yeah,
so, yeah.
And for me, I was really so delighted. I don't know if I would say surprised. I was so delighted at how well it worked. Again, we have a lot of experience as learning professionals and coaches, you mentioned, as trainers and facilitators, and yet the pieces just fit together. I thought, well, we'll prototype this, and then we'll review it and change it. We haven't had to really change it significantly. Enriching it, yes, because you learn from each group, but change it, no.
I get the feeling it was part of the way the two of you clicked back at the beginning too. I've seen you interact now off camera and on camera, and certainly there's something there that you felt you could work together. That's not necessarily always the case.
Yeah, and that's that's the starting point. The passion, the commitment, the drive. And we believe that everyone is a leader and everyone should find their passion and do what they love full time.
And we
Full
love
stop.
to do this together.
Yeah.
And I think one of the best pieces of advice that we got was focus on the relationship, and the business and the outcomes will follow.
That's always good advice. Follow your passions, right?
Yes.
That's what it's all about. So how much do people walk on an average weekend? What are you setting a target for miles, things like that?
Well, we do ask people to be able to walk about 4 miles.
Okay.
We actually
That's reasonable over the period of the weekend?
Yeah, so
Yep.
12
Okay.
miles.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we had started with a higher idea in mind. Oh, let's go out.
Yeah.
And then we realized we were saying 6 miles. And I think we had crossed over a threshold of sort of general comfort.
Right.
And I think 4 miles, people either feel it's a stretch I can do, or this is something I'm used to doing.
Right. I just wanted to ask a little aside there. Like, how many miles are we actually talking about here? There's great stuff. How can people find out more about it? You have a website for Leadership in Motion?
Yes. www.aWALKening.com and leadershipandmotion.com.
And like your true north.
Like your true north? Oh, that's the
Yeah.
website address as well.
Yeah, Leadership and Motion.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And we are actually in the process of working with an organization who's implementing that emerging leadership model in the Netherlands, and they're adopting us as a startup. So they're going to create a real smashing website that is in progress right now.
All right. And you'll be bringing this back to Brattleboro again?
Oh,
of course.
absolutely.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Well, really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks for having
All
us.
right. That's all the time we have for today on Open Studio. Thank you for joining us. I want to remind everybody that you can find this episode on demand, as well as when it will air on Brattleboro Community Television's channels 8 and 10 at brattleboro.tv.org.